Okay, so we have already seen in our previous classes regarding risk analysis, we have seen. So we have seen in our previous classes about risk management process. So we have seen what is risk-based testing and then what is the risk management process. In that we have seen we have four different steps. See, in that we have started with risk identification. So risk identification, how we can do using different workshops, checklists, interviews, cause effect diagrams, this, and then root cause analysis. Based upon all these factors, we can identify the risk, and then that risk will be listed in a risk register. What are the root causes and how we have tracked that and how to monitor that, everything will be there in the risk register. So that we have already seen. So now we'll see the risk breakdown structure. So what is meant by risk breakdown structure is nothing but how we can plan, how whenever any risk comes or what are the different risks are there, how to plan that. Okay, so for that a risk breakdown structure is very important. So what it is going to do is it is going to tell what are the very high risk zones or risk prone areas where the risk is expected, and then how efficiently the evaluation we can do, and then how we can monitor the risk over the entire project. So to know that risk breakdown structure will be very useful. So the same thing we'll see, it is little clear, so that's why I have given here. So this is the risk breakdown structure. You can see time, so schedule delays and then changes, people, any shortages are there, any labor strikes are there, and then skill deficiency is there. So that means main areas when related to time, when related to people, when related to cost, when related to deliverables, for each and everything what is the problem, where that particular problem or risk may occur. So we are predicting it or we are giving it before, so that it will be very easy to identify what are the high prone areas where we'll get risk, and then we are going to have a plan further to how to deal with such kind of risk. So in that way it will be very useful. So for that we'll be using this risk breakdown structure. So we'll see, you can see here based on the deliverables, quality, contract and market. So if you take people, if any people are shortage, for example if you take any textile industry, so any order is going to come, then if that much amount of people are not there to get that order ready, otherwise any strike, any labor strike happens, otherwise that skill is not there. That means only 20 people is know how to do that particular order, and then other 30 to 80 people don't know how to do. Then also if people are there also, then you can't fulfill for that order, right? So skill deficiency is there. So this is the main area when you're taking people side. So whenever you are thinking of any project, when you are thinking to accept any project, then you have to think in all these ways, how much time we have and whether the people we have are having all the skills we have, and what is the cost. So we can see here escalation, estimating errors, and then penalty exposure, and then exchange rates. So these are the places where we'll be generally having the risks if anything happens. So those we are going to consider, and then deliverables. So component issues or any design issues, unproven design, and then problem of technical success, all these things comes under our deliverables. And then the quality, how the performance is there, and then what is the warranty exposure, and then what are the subcontractor items. So all this comes under quality. So all each and every thing should be taken into consideration, and then we need to write the risk breakdown structure, so that we'll tell these are the more areas where they are prone to risk. And then when going with the contract, maybe lack of clarity, that means the customer is going to tell you something, you are understanding something, and based on that you are giving some kind of contract. So output will be not as expected for both the parties. So lack of clarity, disputes, and then subcontractor failures, if at all. Nowadays if you see in civil, generally in civil market, one builder want to build a building means he is not going to do the entire thing. He is going to give a subcontract to some other company to build the structure, some other company for flooring, some other company for electrical, so like that. So in that case also, if any failure of that subcontractor happens also, finally the customer is going to ask the person who has started the business, right, means the person from where they have bought, they don't know, or they are least bothered about all other things. Whether the subcontractors delivered you or not, that is not at all matter to them. The only matter to them is you have promised them to give in certain specific time. You need to do it, right? So that is also one of the issue, one of the important high risk issue. And then funding, and then market. If you have any common success or failure, then that is also a problem. So these are all the different areas where we need to understand whenever we are going to take any project. So if you have a risk breakdown, it will be very easy. We know all these things, right? We know all these things, but whenever you are accepting a project, you will not, you may be some of the points if you are not making that in a structure. But when you take it as a breakdown structure, by seeing that itself, you can identify, okay, this project is not, maybe in this cost, these many risks may come. So based on that, you can decide whether you want to go further with that project, or whether you want to modify some functionality, or whether you want to drop it. Okay. So for this, we'll use the structure. So we have done the risk identification, that is done. Then what is the second thing we need to do? That is risk analysis. Okay. So risk analysis can be quantitative or qualitative. In the both ways we can do. So how we can do risk analysis means, once when we are identifying the risk, we need to analyze them and we need to filter the risk based on the significance. So that is the next step we need to do while analyzing the risk. So one of the things by which we can do this is by the qualitative risk analysis can be done using a technique called as risk matrix. Okay. So what is this technique means? It is mainly used to determine the probability and impact of the risk. So what is the probability that risk is going to come, or that risk has occurred or might occur in future, and what is the impact of the risk? Whether that risk is not noticed, that means if at all any risk you are identifying, but it is not going to show much impact on other things, means that is okay. If it is showing what, where and what impact it is showing, based on that you need to deal with that particular risk. Okay. So risk analysis is done like that. So we'll discuss more about the risk matrix in our coming topics. So that is how we do risk analysis. After this, risk analysis, the third step we are going to do is risk response planning. We have identified the risk. Sorry. We have identified the risk, we have analyzed the risk. Now what we have to plan, risk response planning should be done. So whatever analysis we have done, based on that, if the risk is going to require a response, we have to decide it. Okay. So what it means we need to change something, or we need to modify something, or we need to monitor the project for this risk every time, or at this particular point of time. Like that we need to analyze, because some of the risk only they are going to require this response, some of them don't require. Okay. If at all they are, they required, means then we need to give a response. What is response? It is nothing but any modifications in the project plan or any monitoring should be done. So all these things will comes under our response. And some of the risks no need to give any response, so that time no need. So first we need to decide that based on the analysis, whether the risks require a response or not. Okay. So after this, in response planning only, we need to consider two things. One is risk mitigation, and then other thing is risk contingency. What is risk mitigation? Risk mitigation is nothing but a method, risk response method. Generally we'll be using this to reduce the impact of the threats. Okay. Mitigation means you understood, right? We are going to eliminate, or we are going to reduce the threats whatever we are expecting. Okay. So how can we do that? Means we can do this by eliminating the risks or reducing them to the acceptable level. Maybe because of any change in the functionality, or because of some changes, if you can make that, we'll do such that we are going to eliminate the risk. Otherwise we will at least reduce the risk. That means maybe impact will reduce, or the time duration when we are expecting, that maybe we are going to reduce somehow to the acceptable level, we are going to reduce. That is nothing but risk mitigation. Again, how we can do that means, we have different methods are there for risk mitigation again. So the other one is risk contingency. So these all things also should be planned in our risk response planning step. Okay, in our risk management process, in this step only we are going to plan what is the risk mitigation, how to do that, and then how we have to manage that particular risk. Then the other one is risk contingency. What is risk contingency means? We can describe this as a uncertain event. Okay, so possibility of an uncertain event. So, but we can't predict the impact. So that is maybe you may get the input where we can predict, maybe because of that we got this. Otherwise, it is very unpredictable. Okay, so we need to make a contingency plan, that is nothing but an action plan or a backup plan if any such kind of scenarios comes. So what I am telling initially is we'll be identifying some risks and we'll be trying to analyze that, and we are trying to do some action we are going to do. We are going to do some planning I am going to do, right? But in contingency, some of the events will be such that, right, some of the risks will be such that you can't even predict the impact, or it is very unknown where it is going to impact. In such cases, we need to provide a backup plan. We need to come up with a backup plan or action plan if any such kind of worst case scenarios are going to happen. Actually, it will not happen, but if at all it happens also, we are going to come up with a backup plan. So that is, these all planning will be done in risk response planning, whether we need to give a response or not, we'll decide. And then if any risk is there, how to mitigate that, and then how risk contingency can be done. If at all any worst case scenarios are going to come, everything will be done in risk response planning. So you can see here diagram representing risk response strategies. One is the positive risk response, the one is the negative risk response. In positive risk response, we'll be having different criteria to enhance, exploit, accept, and share. So whereas in negative, we'll be mitigating, transfer, avoid, and accept. So that means whenever it is a good positive risk means we are going to enhance it, we are going to accept it, share it, everything. If it is a negative risk response, which is not intended, which is not proper, then we try to mitigate it. That means eliminate it. Otherwise, we are going to transfer it to some place or we have to avoid it. So like that we can do. So this is the risk response strategy. And then the final step in our risk management process is risk monitoring and control. So first we have identified the risk. After identification, what we have done? We have done the risk analysis. After risk analysis, we have done risk response planning we have done. And finally, we'll be doing monitoring and control. So again, the basic idea here is we are going to monitor as well as we are going to control the risk. So why we need to do this is we are doing this to track the identified risk. How many risks are there? Because we are identifying many risks, but we are not making any record. We can't understand who has identified what risk and how many risks are identified and all, and what monitoring are done. Everything need to be checked, right? So in this control and monitor process, we are going to track the identified risks. Okay, and then we are going to monitor the residual risks also. If any new risks are there, we are going to identify, and then we are going to update the risk register. We have already seen, right? What is the risk register? We have seen already. It is a spreadsheet which has list of identified risks and potential reasons, responses, and root causes. What are all there? We are going to note down in risk register, so that we need to update. So while monitoring and control, we are going to update that. And then we are going to analyze the reasons for any reasons, if at all any changes is going to occur, and execute risk response plan and monitor risk triggers. So these all will be done by our risk monitoring and control part. So these are different steps in risk management process. Okay, so you can see a diagram here. It is going to tell the inputs to risk monitoring and control, what are all the inputs you can give, and then what are all the tools and techniques you can use for risk monitoring and control, and what is the output. This is one of the important steps. How the risk identification is very important. Even monitoring and control is equally important. So it is not like just we need to identify it and we have to leave it. It is not like that, right? We need to identify it, we need to analyze it, and then we need to give the response planning, and then you have to monitor and control. This is one of the important step in our risk management process. So what is the input we are giving? Risk management plan. So it is going to do project risk response audits, and work around plans will come. So like that, for risk response plan, you'll get a corrective action, and project communication plan, you'll get the project change request, and additional risk identification analysis, you'll be giving updates to the risk response plan and risk identification checklist. That means these are all the things what we are going to do in our risk monitoring and control. We have different criteria. So in that, we are going to see what will be the output and tools and techniques. Okay. So this is the risk management process. So next we'll see what is risk-based testing approach. Okay, we have already seen what is risk-based testing. So how actually this approach will be there. So for risk-based testing approach, we need to analyze the requirement first, and then we need to prepare the initial documents, SRS and FRS, that should be reviewed, and then requirement sign-off is there, should be there. One of the very efficient risk reduction technique for avoiding the introduction of late changes. That means whenever the client is going to give you the requirements, we need to take the requirements and we need to sign off the requirements. That means further more requirements cannot be given in that way. If at all again they want to give something, they have to come through the team. Okay, so change team will be there. So they need to analyze what changes will occur if this is happening, that they will monitor, and then they'll be they will not further accept any kind of requirements. If at all they want to give, they need to contact the change team, and they need to explain why they want to change, and then finally after that only they can do. Okay, so that we have to do in this based. After that, assess the risks by calculating the likelihood. Okay, so what is the likelihood, and then what is the impact each requirement that is going to have on the project. We need to identify, we need to assess. Okay, so what is the risks, or how to assess the risk means based upon the cost, based upon the schedule, based upon the resources, and then scope. So all these factors or the criteria will take into consideration, and then we are going to assess the risks. Okay, so the next one is to identify the probability of failure and high risk areas. As I told, when we identify that, it will be quite easy for us to handle the risk also, right? So have to identify the probability of failure and high risk areas. So again, this will be done by a risk assessment matrix. So we use a risk register to list the set of identifiers that we have already told, and then risk profiling also will be done at this stage to understand the risk capacity and risk tolerance level, how much capacity it is having and what is the tolerance level. And after that, we'll prioritize the requirements based on the rating. Okay, so who is having high rating will be that particular requirement will be developed fast, and next like that, so on. And then risk-based test process is always defined process. Okay, so this is the some of the important things. Still many more are there, how to implement risk-based testing approach. So we can see, and then other thing is highly critical and medium risks can be considered for mitigation planning, implementation, and then progress monitoring. Okay, so low risks, what are all there, that will be considered on a watch list. High critical, those kind of things, we are going to again do that. That means mitigation planning will be done, implementation will be done, again progress monitoring will be done. So risk data quality assessment is nothing but we are going to analyze the quality of the data. Okay, and then plan and define test according to the rating. We have to plan it and we need to test it according to the rating. So why we are discussing all these things in risk-based testing approach? What is the approaches? How we are going to follow for that? So how we can do that? For that we have taken this. So in that only we are going to see. So next we need to apply appropriate testing approach. We need to apply. And then test design documents we need to take to design the test cases. So that we'll do. And then different test design technique also we can use. One of the technique is we need to use the decision table technique on high risk test items. And then we will be using low risk test items, we'll be using equivalence testing. Okay, because it is efficient decision table technique whenever we have a high risk test items. So that we'll do. And then test cases also we are going to design to cover all the functionalities of that particular business scenarios. Okay, so that is also one of the things we are going to do in this. And then we are going to prepare the test data as well as the conditions, everything we are going to prepare, and then we are going to review the plans, test plans, strategies, cases, reports, whatever it is there, we are going to review. And then peer review is also there. The main purpose of this peer review is to defect the identification risk reduction. So this is also done. Then we'll be performing dry runs and quality checks on the results. Finally, we need to see whatever we have done is working or not. So we'll do that. So after doing that, test cases is fine, right? Now test cases are executed according to the priority of the risk item. According to their priority, they are going to execute, and then they are going to maintain the traceability also will be there between risk items. Okay. So this is all the procedure by which we are going to do our risk-based approach. We are going to reassess the existing events. If at all any problem is there, we'll update the risk register again, and then we'll be doing the retesting and regression testing also. If at all, if any risk analysis is found out in that particular area, we need to do means we'll do. And then finally, risk monitoring and control will be done. So this is how we'll be doing in risk-based testing. So this is the risk-based testing approach where we are going to identify risk based upon many different parameters. Okay. Okay. So now after knowing what is risk-based and what is the risk management process, and after that we have seen what is risk-based testing approach. So after this, we'll go on to test plan. So what is meant by a test plan, and what are all the attributes we will be having, what are all the different types of test plans we will be having, and how to do and when to do. So all these things we'll see in our test plan. So test plan is nothing but it is a document which is going to tell you about the scope and activities done by the testing. Okay. It is mainly it acts as basis for testing any software or product. So test plan only, right? Whenever you want to test anything, we'll write a test plan, then only we are going to test it. So it is the basic for everything. Maybe that may be your own personal one, otherwise some software, some product in a project, whatever everything. Test plan is mandatory. And then we are going to describe the software testing scope and activities. Okay. So that we are going to do in test plan. So basically master test plan and phase test plan will be there. So master test plan is nothing but they are going to take the address multiple test levels. They are going to take different levels, and they're going to test. That is master test plan. And phase test plan is one particular test to that particular phase, one test phase. So if that phase is we are doing, only that phase will be done. Whereas in master test plan will be having different addresses, multiple test levels will be there. Okay. So we have different types of test plan. That is master test plan is there, and then testing level specific test plans is there. So these are different testing type specific test plans, and then master test plan are the different plan types. Okay. So in master test plan, what we are going to do is we are going to take a single high level test plan. We are going to take for the project and product, whatever we are doing, and then we are going to unify all of the test plans. One simple high level test plan only we are going to select. That is the master test plan. And then testing level specific test plans means for each and every level of testing, we'll be doing again a specific test plan. Okay, for unit testing, for integration, for acceptance, for system, each and every. So planning for each level of testing. So that is nothing but testing level specific test plans. Okay. So this is what a test plan is, and then different types of test plan. So this is a test plan template. So how the test plan template should look like. So first we'll be having the test plan identifier. It is going to identify, and then in introduction. So we'll have the introduction, what it is about, and what is the test plan for which what we have written and all. And then differences is nothing but from where we have before that. And then what are all the test items we need to do, and then what are all the features that need to be tested and that need not be tested also will write. And then what is the approach we need to follow, we'll be doing, and then we'll be seeing whether the item is going to pass or fail the criteria, that also we need to see. and then suspension criteria and resumption requirements. Okay, so this is also there in our test plan template and test deliverables. So this is the way, or this is the test plan template by which we, that is independent of each and every project. That means for my project, test plan identifier will be separate. For other project or for other person project, the test plan identifier will be separate. But this template is same, but whatever data we'll get will maybe different. Okay, maybe the identifier is different, introduction is different, so like that. But this is the template by which we are going to do the test plan. First we are going to take the identifier, then the introduction, what we are going to do, what are the references we have, so like that we are going to do the test plan. This is the template for our test plan. So some more things are there. We are going to tell the test environment on which we are going to test. We are going to estimate. We are going to schedule it, and then staffing and training needs if anyone wants. That also we are going to do, and then responsibilities and risks we are going to identify, and then assumption and dependencies, also approvals also. So this is the template. In the template only we'll have all these things. What is the test environment, what is the estimate, what is the schedule, what is the staffing and training needs, what is the responsibility, what is the risk, what is the assumptions and dependencies, approvals, everything will be there in our test plan template. Okay, so whatever it is appropriate for that application, we can take and we can keep. We can't tell for everything that approach will be there, for everything an algorithm will be there. It is not like that, right? For some of the subjects only we'll have algorithms, for some of the like other subjects we don't have, right? In the same way, whenever you are taking a any project also, whenever we are taking any project also, so all the features are not, or all the template, all the whatever items we have given are not applicable to all. Okay, so some of the items are not, or some of the template things are not applicable. That times you can take it off. So assumptions and dependencies may not be there for all, so that we can take a, so what are all need to be included in the test plan is there here. So based upon our application and the project, we can add whatever is relevant to our project. Okay, but we have seen what are all there in the test plan template. So these are all the things that is there in the test plan template.